Didn't talk at the first day, a couple of days of first media day. And then the first day of practice later, he basically announced he intends to coach this season without a contract.
Without a contract extension. He has a contract.
Without a contract extension, yes. He has a contract for this year. Did that surprise you? And what do you make of that as you look at the Warriors going forward here?
Yes, I was surprised he was so transparent publicly that he's not even seeking one. Because this happened a few years ago where he was on, you would call it the lame duck season, which he would say, he's more comfortable than your normal coach going into a lame duck season for a variety of reasons. But they were having ongoing negotiations that season, and it got done, I think, in maybe February, where he signed an extension. So for him to not only say, hey, I wasn't surprised he said, I'm not concerned and I'm not going to let it become a storyline. But the fact that he said, I'm not even going to seek one and we're just going to wait and see until next summer, that raised the eyebrow a little bit, especially because we all know Steph has 2 more years on his deal. Jimmy Butler has 2 more years on his deal. Draymond Green has 1 and 1. He has a player option, but basically 2 more years on his deal. And the presumption was he would want it lined up with that. But the fact that he didn't, I think there's a few reasons for it, and we can go over it. But the one thing I will say is you mentioned, I have a story coming out with Steve later this week. It's about Steve Kerr and Steph Curry's relationship. And within it, he clarified with me, he will not leave the Warriors for another NBA job. He's not leaving it open-ended because, the Spurs is appealing to him or this or that. It's going to either be they get to the end of the season and maybe it's like step away from the game, or what I think is more likely, and he's kind of hinting, it's like he still thinks he'll very likely be the coach of the Warriors beyond the season, but it just has to go right and it has to feel right after the season. But as of right now, I would definitely predict this is not his last season with the Warriors.
Okay, so Vinny, this is not last dance energy, I think is what I'm trying to feel.
Well, he went through that and he knows how exhausting that is. Like Phil Jackson on the last year, Jordan on the last year, Pippen on the last year, Rodman, like all those guys were free agents. Like these guys, it's not really like that. And I'm not sure there's this, and Slater, you tell me if I'm wrong. I don't sense that there's the same organizational fatigue that even in 2019, the last year of Kevin Durant, like that seemed very fatiguing. This season or even last year, like that energy didn't seem like, man, this is a slog. Can't wait till this is over to get to the next thing. I don't think they're fresh as daisies, but I think they're all curious. And I think that's why maybe Steve is sort of leaving his options open. The option of coaching the Warriors beyond this year.
Yeah. I mean, Steph's called it a 2-year window. So I think they're almost talking, if the last dance would be maybe a 2-year walk towards that. And then the other thing, I think it was buried within his answer that you're talking about, but he is of the belief that this era for the dignitary should end as gracefully as possible. It already kind of hasn't.
Well, that's Last Dance. That's Last Dance inspired right there.
Yes, 100%. And his history's kind of mixed into all this, but Klay Thompson, the fact that didn't end the way that they would have hoped, Klay Thompson's final days in Golden State. I think that was informative to him. When Draymond Green a couple of years ago was going through the suspensions and, the mess with the league and all that, one of the very influential conversations that I think got Draymond Green back on the right path was Steve Kerr went to his house, and apparently they were even kind of crying, talking about he wanted Draymond for it to end well for Draymond with the Warriors and with the NBA, and that there was so much more beyond, and that it was important for them to like I said, go out gracefully. And I think part of why he is taking his contract negotiations this way and saying the end needs to go this way is because I think he's trying to set an example that this needs to be a very polite farewell, and he's going. I don't think he's number one. I don't think he's getting fired. Number two, when he is not coaching the Warriors, I think they're going to have a press conference announcing it in a celebratory manner, basically. And I think that's him setting the stage for that.
Well, Vinny, you spent a lot of time in Chicago, and I don't know if you were at the game the night when the Warriors were in Chicago a couple of years ago. You were probably there, Slater, when they honored the one of the Bulls teams. I don't know which.
I was there.
I know where
you're
going.
And Jerry Krause's widow. Yes. She wasn't getting booed. Jerry Krause was getting booed. And I thought it was a relevant thing that the Warriors were there. I assume ostensibly so Steve could be a part of it.
He was a part of it.
And it was at halftime, right? And Steve was out there. And
Nothing
and now
ends
Jordan
gracefully
and
in the
Pippen aren't
NBA.
talking.
Nothing ends gracefully in the NBA. When you look at modern NBA history, not to hijack you, Wendy,
No, please.
the Bulls, the closest thing I think to a graceful ending was probably Tim Duncan walking off in Oklahoma City when they lost in 2016. What was that, game 5 or game 6? And they gave him a standing ovation at the end of that.
I was
But
at that game, covering the Thunder.
I'm sure you were. Yeah. Every great dynasty, the Bulls didn't end gracefully. Like, Jordan is still bitter as hell. Like, Magic caught HIV, Bird's back went out. You like, when you think of the dynastic group, even the Kobe Bryant Lakers, that they went out with Andrew Bynum going, like, putting his forearm in the chest of poor JJ Barea, and Phil Jackson punching Pau Gasol in the locker room. Like, none of this. I think it's honorable for Steve Kerr to say this is going to go out gracefully. But when you got Jimmy Butler and then Draymond Green in the locker room, you think they're going to be concerned about going out gracefully? Has he met them?
Well, it's already not ending gracefully because, where is the Clay relationship right now, Slater?
Frayed, but that's more pointed towards the top of the organization, the management, how the contract stuff went then at the Steve Kerr, Steph Curry, Draymond aspect. But you're right. I think, but this is Steve saying his chapter is going to end gracefully, and I think he's very much of the belief that Steph Curry's is going to. And again, that may mean a bad playoff exit in the final year or whatever. Like, it's not like he's saying we're going to win a title and then walk away, but it's more like Steph will have a celebrated final chapter with the Warriors. And I think he has really tried to redirect Draymond back to that after there's been various points where it seemed like it was going haywire. And I can remember being at the press conference after the Jordan Poole punch in the preseason being like, this might be it. For Draymond. And now he's part of the, I'm writing this story about Steph and Steve and their 12 years together, and he tries to rope Draymond in the conversation because it's 12 years with Draymond, and there's kind of a belief that he's going to kind of ride it out in this chapter. And they've been reinvigorated by the Butler edition, the Al Horford edition. So, again, I'm not predicting a title and it's going to end like storybook Disney-like, but I do think there is intention to make it end in a way where they're honoring what they were.
Yeah, I'll never forget the story. It was during the 22 finals where they were ahead 3-2, and they'd come back for game 6. They ended up closing out game 6 in the night game. And before the game, Draymond tells the story that when they flew out to Boston from San Francisco, that they happened to sit at the NBA Jets have like 4 seats together with a card table in between them.
Basically.
Yeah. Typically it's for card play. There's a couple of them. But I couldn't hang on those in those games, but apparently it just so happened that particular flight, the 4 seats were Bob Myers, Draymond, Klay Thompson, and Steph Curry. And the 4 of them had been there for the whole run. There had been some guys come and go, Sean Livingston was obviously a core member, but he had retired. Kevon Looney has been there for most of it, but I don't, those were the core guys. And Bob was talking to him at the moment, like how rare it is to be able to stay together for this long, to go through what they went through, to go through the highs of 2014-15, the lows of 2019, and then the rebuild where, Steph played 5 games in 1 year, and now they're back on top and they win. And I asked Bob about it later, and he's like, me and Draymond, we're talking about it seriously. Steph was just politely listening and Clay was sleeping. It's not as storybook as it sounded, but, within like months, Clay and Bob were gone, And so in all honesty, I mean, Steve would be a part of that group too. He wasn't sitting there. Steve is obviously a part of that group, but in the case of Myers was around even longer. Myers drafted Clay, drafted Draymond. So, but it is rare that it would end that way. Okay. So to shift to this year's Warriors, when Shams' story came out about Giannis and the Knicks, my thoughts immediately turned to Golden State, because I know that Giannis said, I'm here for 6 or 7 months. It was kind of his way of saying, without saying, that he's going to play this season in Milwaukee. I think those were the words that was the message he was trying to send. And then he'll take a look. The Bucks, from what I understand, as you can imagine, when that story came out, you would do this too. The Bucks got some phone calls. Hey, I know about the talks with the Knicks. Are you interested in having talks with us? Or to at least register, hey, listen, if you revisit that, call us. And I heard the Bucks said, hey, appreciate it, but we got our team, we're going. So there's nothing there. But let's be honest, like if you asked for if you'd had trade discussions in August, maybe they'll have a great season, but if you had trade discussions in August, let's reevaluate things. That's why Shams keeps talking about 20-25 games. Like, he's not saying that to create chaos in Milwaukee. I think he's saying that because he thinks that's a possibility. And so, yeah, the Knicks could do something, but I thought about the Warriors. And, one of the whole things as we went through the Kuminga, I didn't really go through much of it at all. I just kind of sat back and watched. You lived and died with that, Slater. But the one thing that I thought about was, at the end when the dust settled, they got him to give up the no trade clause that he would have had on a normal 1-year contract. And not that they did that just for Giannis, but they emerged on the other side of it with the ability to trade him come mid-January. And so while I understand that we're going to talk about the Warriors and how Jimmy Butler looks, and, Pajemski had a big game the other night and all this kind of stuff, am I wrong? No one's told me it's not like I've been told that this is on the Warriors.
Because I've talked to Warriors people in the aftermath, because you guys know, like the league was talking about Sham's story and the revelations of it in the aftermath, and they poured cold water on the idea that there were some like hot Giannis destination. But I will also say they were kind of pouring cold water on the Jimmy Butler idea around this time last year, and them being a fit with Jimmy Butler. And then they went 12-3 out of the gates. I was like, this team's fine.
Yeah, they were playing 11 guys. And
remember that? It was like the greatest 12-man rotation. DeAnthony Melton had the greatest 6-game run in NBA history with the Warriors. But, I think they didn't, as you mentioned, they didn't just get the Kuminga contract because they have some far off dream that Giannis will definitely come to them. They know like they can't really win a bidding war for Giannis if every team in the league went after him. They don't have like the best young asset base, the most draft capital. Now they're middle tier for two reasons. Number one, they haven't traded away, their capital. Last year in the Butler trade, they only gave one first rounder away, and they made sure it was that last draft. It was the 20th pick in this previous draft. So they weren't, entangled with the Stepien role. They have a top 20 protected 2030 first out the window for the Chris Paul Jordan Poole swap. But generally they have pretty good draft capital. And if you were, the Bucks, for example, like the Warriors have a pretty appealing, like their future picks are pretty appealing because it's going to be the post Steph Curry era. Like those could be very good picks. So I think they could get in the mix, but my vibe from them is there's not some strong belief or plan that like, this is going to happen. Right now, internally, it's about this like Jimmy Butler, Steph Curry, Draymond Green, and Al Horford, like aged foursome trying to make one or two last competitive runs here. If the Giannis thing were to materialize, if he would directed himself there, I think that's an important part of this.
Yeah, that's the thing.
Yeah,
Vinny, that's the thing. Like the thing that's unsaid about Giannis, I mean, I don't want to trigger the Bucks fans, but the dude watch their summer and then like let the Bucks have talks with the Knicks. I don't know what you want me to say. But if Giannis gets to next summer and wants to be traded with 1 year on his contract, he's going to have control. So if it is the Knicks, there's a chance that's where it's going to be. But because he's only going to have 1 year, he's going to be able to control it, kind of like Durant just controlled his situation.
Look, as soon as the season starts, Giannis is in control. You don't even have to wait until next summer. I think it would be bad form if the Milwaukee Bucks were to
The Golden State Warriors entered their preseason matchup against the Portland Trail Blazers, missing two of their veterans, Draymond Green and Jimmy Butler. That left room for some experimentation, and so Steve Kerr made a bold choice. Will Richard would start. He found out only that very morning during shoot-around. Playing alongside Curry, Brandon Podziemski, Jonathan Kuminga, and Al Horford, Richard knew this was a chance. And he seized it. In 29 minutes, he poured in 13 points on 4 of 7 shooting, grabbed 6 rebounds, dished 2 assists, and ended the night as a +10 while doing all of this defensively, cutting, moving, and finding space. Steve Kerr couldn't help but smile. Will really knows how to play. He's in the right spots all the time. He's active defensively. We're really excited about him. If you're on the roster, there's always a path. Yes, a path. Because tonight was more than just a box score. It was a message. What we learned about Will Richard tonight. 1. He belongs with the stars. Richard admitted he hadn't even practiced with Curry or those starters, but when asked whether it felt different playing with veterans, he was cool, calm, and clear. At the end of the day, it's just basketball, but it's definitely a little different. They know how to play. That sense of poise under pressure is rare in rookies. 2. Efficiency and presence. 13 points on 4 of 7 is elite-level efficiency, especially in a first big role. He didn't force anything. He moved, attacked when he saw an opening, and made the right reads. When the defense collapsed on another star, he was ready to pop out, to cut, to help. He didn't look overwhelmed. 3. Defense, activity, intangibles. Kerr praised him for being active defensively, always in the right spot. In a system that prizes defense just as much as offense, that's gold. Add in his awareness, his ability to rotate and get in passing lanes, and he's checking multiple boxes. 4. Trust from the coaching staff. Kerr didn't downplay it. He said bluntly, "I won't hesitate to put him out there in the regular season." This isn't a one-game fluke in Kerr's eyes. It's confidence built on observation, practice, and now proof under fire. The front office clearly sees something they want. Why this matters for the Warriors season. Golden State is entering a pivotal year. The Curry window still exists, but time is always ticking. They need role players who can step up when starters rest. They need energy, depth, and trust. Richard gives them another legitimate weapon. The fact that he can move seamlessly with the starters, that he can survive pressure moments, that he can defend and space the floor, that adds a dimension to the roster we haven't always had. And more than that, this is the kind of performance that changes perceptions. Opposing teams will now take note. Rotations will have to account for him. And if he keeps this up, he becomes a headache matchup for any squad. Remember, tonight was in preseason, but the tone was set. The statement was made. The Warriors' future might just be a little brighter because of this performance. Warriors Nation, now it's your turn. Do you believe Will Richard just announced himself as a rotation piece for this season? Do you see him getting consistent minutes? And how much trust do you give Steve Kerr's comment that he won't hesitate to play him? Hit that like button if you believe in this kid's moment. Leave your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to Warriors Nation News, because we ride or die with these moments. And tonight was a reminder, the Warriors culture is alive and the future is knocking.